Good morning and welcome to the Public Safety and Veterans Subcommittee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is call to the public. Eric Nelson, come on up.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Funny story, one time I was afraid that I was going too public with stuff, but I talked to a police officer who worked at the library, and he told me in this country you have the right to say whatever you want. And I promised myself I wouldn't cry, but to be honest, I've never had a moment and actually hit my mark, so this is my chance to just introduce myself to my city and just kind of fade away, you know? But the point being, what I'm trying to say is about 10 years ago, I made some friends. I made some real good friends, like some of the council people and some other people. But I was so unsure about my country, I was afraid to trust it. So I went to them and I said, please, make it so hard for me to get by. I want you to just do every trick in the book to make it impossible for me to come up, because this country is only as strong as its weakest link. I don't ever want to make more than $2,000 in my bank account, because if you make that much more than that, SSI cuts you off. Excuse me for 1 second while I collect myself. I get 2 minutes. Now I can see the timer. Okay, but what I'm really trying to get at is what I've come to realize is that if you listen to what your teacher says and you're a good person, the city's got you. These wonderful people here will help you. Okay, and some bad things happen to me, but you know what? I got way less. I came out of it all right, is what I'm trying to get at. I told, like, people were real, like, there was a lot of uncertainty about me for a long time. And you know what? This city came through in the most brightest possible way. So I just like to thank you so much for just shining some light on everything that's right. And one comment, I would just plead to the public, if you have a gun that you shouldn't have, please go to the Southern Police Station. Just turn it in. I've seen people do it before. They don't care. They just want they want the bad guns off the street. You need to turn it in. Thank you so much, and God bless this city.
Thank you, Eric, for your comments, and thank you for those comments about turning in those guns. Next would be our approval of the minutes,
Move approval.
and I think we have the vice mayor on the other line.
Second.
Alrighty, we have a motion. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Then we have consent items 2 through 5.
I'd move approval if no one wants to pull anything.
Second.
Alrighty, any discussion on those? With that, all those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. All right, we're on item number 6. These are 6 and 7 are items for information only. I'm not sure if I was updated on these information items. I'm not sure if anyone else was.
I'm fine.
Yeah. So we'll just go ahead and move on. Vice Mayor, are you?
Yes.
Information.
Sorry, I dropped.
We're on information items number 6 and 7. We're okay with it. I'm not sure if you want any.
I'm fine.
Alrighty.
I'm fine.
All right. So then we're up to item number 8.
And, Mr. Chair, I think I asked for this, and they have convinced me that we cannot have a stupid hiker law, that there are legitimate rescues, and that we need to continue, and so I will back off, and I don't need any more information.
Alrighty. So then that item, unless the Vice Mayor wants some information on it.
No.
Alrighty. Then that item is dropped. Then we're on item number 9, where we're talking about the department's budgets updates. Basically, this is an item that we put on for the last couple of years to make sure we're good stewards with the tax dollars that are out there. We need a clicker up here.
Think we could trust him with it today?
I'm not sure.
Oh, I see.
It's all yours.
Good morning, Chairman Nowakowski and members of the subcommittee. My name is Jill Salaya. I work in the police department, and I'm going to give you an update of our actuals for the first part of the fiscal year. Of our $635 million budget, we have spent 50%, and right now we are on budget. For December, compared to this fiscal year to last, we're 1% under, and that's mainly due to we didn't have a jail bill paid that month. And then our top 10 expenditures continue to be personal services. I want to point out for overtime, if you take a look at last year through December and this year, we're about 30% less than we were last year. And that equates to about $4.9 million or 100,000 hours. And then motor,
Why is it lower?
because we have made changes in our department, restructured to put more people, more officers out on the streets, and that has reduced minimum staffing needs. And also, management is looking at our overtime monthly with different various reports to make sure that we're trying to trend down. Then, and then I wanted to just point out also on motor vehicles, we spent $8.1 million this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year. We have been able to replace 232 vehicles this year compared to 54 last year. There you go. And then finally, our revenues. One of the biggest differences is for our court awards, and that is just because we've had to request from the county a larger drawdown for some, due to our fund balance was low within the city. And then our special events is a little lower than compared to last fiscal year because we have to wait on all of the school contracts for SROs to be signed before we can charge them. So we'll go back and we have all of them signed as of now. And so we'll go back and charge all the schools for what they owe us from the beginning of the school years. And with that, if you have any questions, thank you.
Good morning, Councilman Nowakowski and members of the committee. I'm Ken Leake, and I'm with the fire department and present our 6-month budget. At the 6-month mark, you can see that we spent $167 million, which is 47.9% of the year. So we're trending just about where we thought we would be at this time. Comparative with the monthly expenditures, there was nothing really that stood out. We're marching along. I think we're right. Again, we're right on track for where we should be at this point of the year. And then taking the top 10 expenditures, much like the police department, their personal services costs. But unlike the police department, our fire overtime, as you can see, is significantly more. This has a lot to do with the 2 hurricane deployments. But when you take those out of the mix, we're about right where we were last year. Outside of that, the rest of them are pretty much trending exactly where we thought they would be.
Question?
Do we get reimbursed by FEMA or someone for that hurricane?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. And then lastly, our revenues have actually caught up this month, and for the ambulance transports, again, we're right where we thought we would be in terms of overall collections there. Dispatch fees and dispatch maintenance are cost recovered, so they're exactly where we should be with those as well. Take any questions? No? Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Will Gonzalez with the Municipal Court. As you see, year-to-date, we're a little under 50% of where we are, at 48.7. And as for our monthly expenditure variance, we're at a 5.45 over last year versus where we thought we would be. Our largest expenditures are consistently that being employment. And as for revenues, you can see there is an increase in the revenues from last year. There is a a increase in citations coming in. Not dramatic, but you can see, I think we have bottomed out and it's slowly coming in, mostly civils. And as for the CAP stats, which tend to be one of the questions posed, we are at 13.8 million paid on the CAP. Over 24,000 individuals have signed up for the program at this time. And then Cottonwood has instituted a CAP program. That's the latest out there. So that goes to Tempe, Glendale. I think Mesa's looking at it. Tucson has one. Cottonwood just announced they were going to do it. So slowly but surely, more cities are looking at the Phoenix model and instituting that for their residents as well. That's good for all of us.
With that, thank you so much. It's so important that we look at the budgets and make sure that we're spending our tax dollars wisely, but at the same time, really proud that y'all are 50% and under at midway point, so thank you. With that, item number 10, body camera request for proposal.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee. I'm Mike Kurtenbach with the Police Department. With me here today is Jim Campion from the Finance Department. And we're going to provide you with an update on the status of the Police Department's body-worn camera procurement and ask for a formal recommendation of the City Council that we be granted permission to move forward with a new RFP. As you may recall, in January of last year, RFP 16-142 was canceled, which afforded us, that was for body-worn cameras, which afforded us the opportunity to kind of go back to the drawing board and rewrite technical specifications that would afford us the opportunity to have the best equipment possible. Since then, we have worked closely with the Information Technology Services Department, Finance, and Law to rewrite those specifications. And we're at a point now where we are prepared to move forward. Some of the changes that we made was we wanted to, as I mentioned, have the best technology, not only for our officers, but for the community that we're entrusted to serve. So we looked at such things as low light sensitivity for the cameras, auto activation features, redundant auto activation features to reduce human error to the extent that it's possible to do so to ensure that the camera captures what it's intended to capture. The ability to record in high definition, and also the ability to more readily view the video in the field where it is needed at times to do so. To refresh your memory about the program as it stands today, we have 300 cameras that are deployed among uniformed officers in patrol, and all of those cameras were purchased using grant funds. There are three specific funding sources: the Smart Policing Initiative through the Bureau of Justice Assistance, the Gila River Indian Community Grant, and the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant. With regard to the Smart Policing Initiative grant, we're one of only 3 agencies in the country that was granted funding to further study the efficacy and the utility of body-worn cameras in law enforcement. This is quite an honor for the police department, and this furthers our partnership with Arizona State University. The goal of the new RFP, should we be afforded the opportunity to release it, is to purchase and deploy up to 2,000 cameras as approved by the council in April of 2016. Now, the Phoenix Police Department has $5 million set aside in our contingency fund to allow us to purchase and deploy this camera technology. It's important to note, however, that at full deployment, a significant portion of that $5 million will be needed to cover staff costs associated with the management of the program itself. So pending council approval to release the RFP, an evaluation committee will be appointed that will conduct a detailed evaluation of this technology. That will include very robust field testing. So we look at real-world testing of the technology, not just a proof of concept, but what it can actually do in the field to ensure that the camera will do what its vendor says it'll do. We'll establish a competitive range and then select the proposer or the proposers to receive the award. And a major portion of this testing will be done actually at the Phoenix Police Academy. So this concludes the formal presentation, and we are available to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Vice Mayor, Mrs. Williams?
I don't have any.
I guess my question is more on procurement side. When you are giving the specifications, I take it from police on what the RFP is to contain. How do you and who evaluates the results?
Councilwoman Williams, there is an evaluation panel that's been selected, working with the police chief and the police department, subject matter experts. They will evaluate this, and as Chief Kurtenbach mentioned, testing is a really important piece of this award. So there'll be an extensive testing that goes on to determine who is the overall successful proposer, with the evaluation panel weighing in. And as mentioned, these are folks that have worn cameras. They're subject matter experts in most cases, and I believe we have a citizen on the panel as well.
So just to be clear, you're going to put out the RFP. Vendors will then submit equipment for testing. You will test it by people who have the experience with cameras right now. And then exactly how do you evaluate? I mean, there's so many points for the different segments that you're going to
Yes. I'm sorry I didn't answer your question the first time. Vendor qualifications will be looking at, hey, where do you have these cameras installed? And, in certain cities, certain sizes. Solution testing is obviously a big part of what I mentioned that will take place at the academy. The method of approach, how they're going to implement these cameras. And then obviously cost is also a component of that. So there's a makeup of, the panel will be evaluating the cameras off of these 4 evaluation criteria. And then obviously the testing.
And then completing the process, and you have 2,000 cameras. How do you train 2,000 people to use them?
So Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Williams, fortunately, we have a lot of experience on the Phoenix Police Department. This will be the 3rd RFP that I've had the opportunity to participate in. And if you recall, the very first pilot program that we conducted back in 2011, I was given the responsibility to oversee that. When we received the first round of grant funding out in the Maryville precinct, I was honored to serve as the commander there to roll out that technology and oversee that procurement as well. The important thing to understand is that we have the opportunity to phase in these cameras over time as budget will allow. The way the cameras are deployed currently, whereas previously they were just in the Maryville precinct as part of the Maryville Estrella Mountain precinct, to be correct. As part of this new Smart Policing Initiative grant, we have cameras in all of the other precincts as well, a smaller number among a random sample of officers. So what this has allowed us to do is to check bandwidth issues, to see if there are capacity issues at the individual workstations, so that the program is scalable. So as we scale the program, what we did is we trained a whole cadre of trainers, a train-the-trainer concept. Whereas the current vendor, the incumbent, provided training to our staff in turn has provided additional training to the individual precincts. In the police department, we were fortunate to have a body-worn camera unit. The sergeant that oversees that body-worn camera unit, Sergeant Kevin Johnson, has been with me every step of the way. So he has more knowledge about the body-worn camera technology than arguably anybody in the country. So to have him on staff to provide that one-on-one training when needed, to swap equipment out, we feel that we are in a very good position to do that.
Now, Assistant Chief, can you go to page 5 on the, I think the clicker's right there. One of the things that I want to make sure is that, are we looking at the best practices of other cities and maybe even yourself and some others actually going to other cities and finding out what are the little hiccups that they might have with their programs? And I know we probably know most of that because we've been running a program for the last, 3 years or so?
As Chairman Nowakowski, members of the subcommittee, that's a great question. This program went live. The current cameras that we have a new iteration that's out there now, almost 4 years ago. It was April 15th of, 5 years ago, 2013, when we went live. But again, just to be very clear, I've been designated as a subject matter expert by the Department of Justice, Bureau of Justice Assistance, their training and technical assistance program for body-worn cameras. So I have access to programs all across the nation to look at those best practices. I have been fortunate, with the support of the police chief, to go around the country to not only provide training on best practices, but to also see what other agencies are doing. And in fact, the Portland Police Department was just here on Monday looking at how we do our program so that they can take that information back to their agency. So we're doing just that. It's ever-evolving technology. In 2011, there was a system that would be deemed archaic today that we looked at, and we've evolved. Those technical requirements that I mentioned that we're looking at, enhancing the low light sensitivity, otherwise the camera at night is just an audio recorder. It needs to have the ability to see. HD, we all see things. If you see a standard definition channel now, I mean, it almost harms the conscience to see it that way. And then I don't want this to be missed. What's really, really important to Chief Williams and the police department is to eliminate that human factor as much as possible. That's where these vendor qualifications and the solution testing will really come into play, to have auto activation. Right now, an officer has to push a button or go through a series of practices depending on the vendor to activate a camera. But to the extent that it's possible to ensure that on a call for service, exiting the vehicle, or some other method that the camera automatically turns on, then you don't miss something that you would want to capture. That's what we're striving to see, and that's part of this whole process, ensuring that we get the absolute best equipment possible.
And for those lay people that are actually watching this, it's much more than just having a body camera on a police officer. It's when we're being requested from the public to release some of that body camera information, that we have to really look at editing a lot of those materials, driver's license, for example, signs, children, stuff like that. So it's much more than just providing equipment, but it's also staff to support all that, right?
Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, that's an excellent point. And for the benefit of the members of the community that are watching, I'll expound upon it. You're absolutely right. In the state of Arizona, anything that we capture in the furtherance of our duties is subject to public record, which means it can be released. And we also have a duty to protect victim and witness information. So if you think of it this way, when an officer responds to a call for service, that address most likely is going to be captured by the camera. There may be personal identifying information that is captured by the camera. It could be a diploma inside the house. It could be a driver's license. It could be the faces of minor children. All of that has to be redacted prior to release. And even when we talk beyond releasing to the public, as we release information to the city prosecutor, there's information that must be redacted as well for prosecution purposes. When we talk about scale, the 300 cameras that we have out there right now, we are generating about 6 terabytes of data a month, 6,000 gigabytes, give or take, a month. If we were to reach full deployment using storage calculators, we believe that we'll be generating 40 terabytes a month. And because of the public records laws in the state of Arizona, we must retain all video for a minimum of 185 days. As a matter of practice, our policy says we'll retain the video 190 days. And this is because a notice of claim can be filed up to 180 days past an incident. So when we're talking about scale, that would mean at any one time we would be managing in the neighborhood of 300 terabytes a month, which in lay terms is a lot.
How does it take to handle all this?
Chairman Nowakowski, Councilwoman Williams, the short answer is we don't know exactly what this is going to look like. Fortunately, we have experience with this 300 camera deployment. The city prosecutor has one dedicated person, a number of other staff that support. On the police department, we have the sergeant that I mentioned, we have an admin assistant, and we have 4 admin aides that are managing all the video right now. In terms of forecasting in the future, that's where this RFP is so important, because when I talk about redaction and then the ability to move the video, whether it be for a public records request or to move the video to the prosecutor or the Maricopa County Attorney's Office, we know that there is software out there that could make that more readily available. It could be easier to do. And I know some people get concerned with the term facial recognition, but if you think of it in terms of this application, if there is software out there to where it recognizes Councilman Nowakowski's face, and as the councilman moves throughout that video, once we blur it once, it continues to blur, that would greatly reduce staff time and subsequent cost. So we wouldn't need nearly as many staff members to manage it. There are things that we know that are on the roadmap, to your point earlier, Mr. Chairman, about what's available out there. But it'll be incumbent upon applicants to prove that concept to us that we can actually utilize. When we came to you in 2016 and we estimated the total cost, what we believe it would require 16 staff members for the police department and 12 for the city prosecutor's office to manage it, for a total of 28 staff members. That could change, however, depending upon the technology.
Thank you.
Is there actually a policy handbook or so that we've created?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, our operations order 4.49, I actually had the honor of writing in cooperation with Sergeant Johnson. We brought the labor organizations to the table to work with us. We vetted that policy to all of our advisory boards. I personally took it out to different community groups to ensure that we were meeting the needs of the community while also having a very robust policy that properly guides our officers. So we do have a policy that tells them when to turn it on, under what circumstances, how we release the video. It follows our serious incident protocol. I feel very confident with our policy, which is also modeled after the International Association of Chiefs of Police, Major City Chiefs Association, Police Executive Research Forum, and the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
And Chief, the other thing is, can we actually get a copy for the committee members so we can actually review that and have an opportunity to see it?
Of the policy?
The policy itself.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing, I just want to make sure that we're talking about citizens' rights, but at the same time, officers also. Is that a part of the policy that what the camera can be used for at referring our police officers? Because I know sometimes our men and women have breaks or so, and they might have the camera on. And is there a way to respect that personal time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, we were very clear to strike a balance between the work that our officers do and our community. And to your point, there are certain things that officers are doing, which we all do in the course of our daily jobs, that we don't think would be suitable to be recorded.
Right.
A lunch break, a bathroom break. There are citizens that want to give us information that would like to remain anonymous, that wouldn't want that information recorded. So there has to be some common sense that's applied. I think we've struck that balance in the policy.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I would move approval if there's no other questions.
We have a motion.
Second.
There's a second. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And any other discussion on the item? Seeing that there's no other discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for all your hard work and for being a model out there in the, for the whole country. So one more, I don't see any more cards for call to the public right now. So any future agenda items?
No, not at this.
Well, maybe this might be time for Corey. No, I think we'll hold off on that, Corey. With that, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.